So I was living this very solid double life. To the rest of the world, I appeared to have it all together. You can't really deal with an addiction and be a good mom at the same time. And I tried. I really tried. My maternal drive was bigger than even my instinct for self-preservation. And yet there was this thing that was bigger than that. Against that, I was powerless.
Laura Cathcart Robbins is the best-selling author of Stash, My Life in Hiding, a raw and unflinching memoir of her journey through addiction. On this episode of the Heart Leader podcast, she shares her story not as a cautionary tale, but as a profound lesson in transparency, forgiveness, and the incredible power of love. Discover why true courage isn't about the absence of fear. It's about taking action in spite of it.
You have to be scared in order to be brave, right? If there's no fear, then it's not bravery. And I wasn't scared to write this. I really wasn't. The Swedish have that expression, a problem shared is halved. And so you really just break off a big chunk of your issue when you share it with somebody.
Is there advice that you often give or share?
My advice to people who have someone in their lives that's struggling with this is to just be prepared for when they are ready to help them. When they are ready, when they actually ask for help, be prepared to offer that help.
Hey, Heart Leader community, if you're liking this video, don't forget to give us a like and a subscribe. All right, Miss Laura, I have had the honor of getting to know you and some of your journey. I know there's so much to you and who you are and what you bring to this world. But in the process of getting to know you, there are so many deep stories that you have to share. And one of them you've written in this best-selling book called Stash. So can you maybe introduce yourself to our community by sharing a little bit about this best-selling book and what it's about?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me on the show. I also did my research and listened to a few of your episodes, and I feel I'm very grateful to be included amongst your guests and to be able to speak to your listeners because you have a lot of them, which is really nice. Stash, My Life in Hiding is about a 10-month period in my life in the year 2008, during which I filed for divorce, in the middle of this debilitating addiction, a bottoming out in that addiction. I was a PTA president. I had just been asked to join the board at my children's very elite private school. So I was living this very solid double life where to the rest of the world, I appeared to have it all together and to kind of be the ideal wife and mom. And behind closed doors, we were getting a divorce and I was dealing with this addiction. The book follows those 10 months, which is, the second part of the book is I go get help for the addiction. And then the third part is coming home and, having met someone, during that time period that I end up romantically involved with, which further complicates everything. And then what that looks like at the end. So it's a 10-month time, like entirely true time period of my life that happened to be very high stakes and have a lot of ups and downs. And it's a little bit like a roller coaster of a ride and a read.
And it's so transparent.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the magic of it, is you didn't attempt to make it beautiful, but it's beautiful because it's so transparent.
Thank you. Thank you.
I feel like so many of us, we have these lives that are raw and real and are that way to teach us so much about ourselves and our souls. And then we desire to put on this mask when we go out and cover up that raw, real beauty.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to show you my raw, real beauty because that's what made me who I am right now.
Yeah. I mean, I wish it was that simple of a decision. It wasn't. It was, something that came about over years and years of telling my story, orally, verbally in recovery rooms and becoming really comfortable with telling my story. And, I did that for 12 years before I wrote this book. So the writing of the book wasn't incredibly courageous because I was so used to telling my story at that point. But if I had tried to write that book, this book right after I got sober almost 17 years ago, it would have been a very different book. It would have been much more guarded, a lot less transparent. I'm a very private person, and it, it, it feels wrong to reveal things that happen behind closed doors. It's counterintuitive for me. And so learning how to tell my story in public, at first in recovery rooms and then in other rooms, and then speaking about it, was the way that I freed myself of that and found that it was okay to put this time period on the page because it would have helped me and maybe it could help other people.
And that was something that really captured my heart too when we had our initial call. Was you mentioned people will tell you it's so brave what you did, or it took so much courage. And your response is what you just said. You're like, well, is it? So can you share a little bit about that? Because that is something, I myself have had, and I think nearly everyone, if they really sit with it and consider it, they know someone or they themselves have gone through some level of an addiction recovery journey in their life because there's someone that they know who is navigating it in some capacity, or they themselves may have it and not have an awareness to what level.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's really insidious, and it's everywhere, not just in our society, but in the world. Addiction touches almost every life. And like you said, whether it's a family member or a friend, or it's someone who, like me, who didn't grow up drinking and using alcoholically, but ended up addicted to Ambien in my 30s, with blindsided by that addiction. I hadn't had no precursor to it. So, it happens when it happens. And when it happens, certain people are ready to deal with it, and some people aren't. I was one of those people who wasn't for a long time. But wait, I just kind of went off and you'd asked me a specific question. Now I can't remember what it was.
But that's key. Like we get blindsided and then we feel like it takes courage. You have to be brave. It takes courage. And when you were like, but does it? I feel like that's so important.
I'm sorry. Yeah. It took so much courage for me to get sober, and admitting to people that I was, this not the ideal mom that they thought I was, that I was dealing with an addiction at the same time that I was raising my children. And honestly, I did the best I could with that, but there's really not space for both those things. You can't really deal with an addiction and be a good mom at the same time. And I tried. I really tried. I did everything I could. But that admission was courageous for me to stand up in front, to tell my friends, to tell the other community leaders at school, like to tell my in-laws, that this is what it's, because nobody knew. I had been very successful at hiding it, and it was time to come clean, literally and figuratively. And I was so scared. So it took all the courage I had to be able to do that, to get help in the first place. But to write about it, you have to be scared in order to be brave, right? If there's no fear, then it's not bravery to do something. If you're not scared of it, it's not brave. It's not courageous. And I wasn't scared to write this. I really wasn't. I was excited to write it because, there had been a bidding war for it. and Simon and Schuster won and they wanted to buy it. And they're like, get this done. So I was really excited to write this story. I was excited during the editing process. I really enjoyed it. Because I was so far removed from it at that point, it didn't even feel like they were talking about me when they talked about the narrator in the book. I felt like I was two people then. Like there was this narrator who went through all these terrible things and came out the other end. And then there was me, the real me, Laura, who was the writer of this, that they were dealing with. And that's how it felt. I felt like I dealt with them as the writer and not the narrator. And it wasn't scary. So it didn't feel brave to put it down.
Silence Your Inner Critic has been nominated for 2 different book awards, the International Book Awards and Bookfest. And I am so grateful that I want to give you a copy for free. Not just a copy, but $200 worth of bundled resources as well. And all you need to do is click on the link below in the show notes to get your copy and pay shipping to get it right to your door. Which is such an incredible way to observe it, because it also, to me, when I sat with that after we had the conversation and I reflected on the journey that I personally went through with the addiction recovery journeys in my own life, it really has a lot to do with how I personally, like everybody's journey is different. Right. And that's another thing that we all have to understand. Everybody's journey is different. When we lump everybody in together, it's such an unfair thing to do. So then I hear your journey and I sit and I reflect, and it felt so key to me because we become the observer of our journey and we realize that, yes, any addiction recovery process is part of our life, but it's not all of who we are, and it doesn't define every aspect of our life.
Yeah.
And we have to then ask, who are you, including that part of your journey, but beyond that journey, what else do you love to do? Who else are you as a spark? And I want to get into that later because I know you do so many other beautiful things. So I want to know you beyond, Stash and the book and all the other beautiful things you bring to this world. But I also want to get back because you had mentioned this addiction was counter to you being this beautiful mother that you are. And when I was looking on your Instagram, you talked about your hitting bottom moment. And sometimes you would think that that is something where you're passed out somewhere and you wake up and you hear all these stories, but yours is actually something so different. And I'd love for you to share your moment.
You're talking about the hawk story?
I am talking about the hawk story.
Yes, you are. So, thank you for that. And that's exactly what I tell people, when people interview me, they often ask like, what's the bottom? And I know they're looking for, I don't like the word or the term trauma porn, but they're looking for that thing that you just described, like me being passed out or the DUI or the, whatever it is, my kids are getting taken away and that's the bottom. Like none of that was the case for me. The bottom was really, and I start this story by talking about my mom who lives near me and she's 80 and she power walks every day and hikes with this forest ranger who's a friend of hers. Sometimes they don't always hike together, but she has a different crew people that she hikes with. And he was telling her once, this forest ranger, about cleaning up after a forest fire. And, what that looks like for the rangers is walking through the fire. You've seen that probably on TV where they walk in tandem. And they are just, observing the forest floor. Oh, not in tandem. What's the opposite of tandem when they're walking across horizontally? Well, you know what I mean, but like walking side by side through the forest.
In a line. Yeah.
Yeah. And scanning for any animal that might need rescuing. And, he happened upon a female hawk that, had her wings spread flat on the forest floor. And he just like got his breath caught in his throat, and he like leans down and gingerly lifts her up by her wings. And behind her are 3 live baby hawks. And so my mom's telling me this story. I'm, mid to the end of my addiction. This is close to the end of me using actively, because when I hear her tell me this story, she has tears in her eyes because it's such a like touching moment, I think, regardless that, so what I heard when she said that was, this is the maternal instinct. And I think we're actually not supposed to say that anymore, but the maternal drive of this hawk was strong enough that she would burn to death while shielding her babies. Like she gave her life so that they could live. And that's how strong her maternal drive was. And that's what I heard when my mom said that. And I thought, my goodness, I have that strong of a drive. My maternal drive is as strong as that. I would take a bullet for my kids. I would shield them from fire if I could with my body. I wouldn't even think about it. It would be the instinct in me. And then the thing that made me cry was I realized in that moment that there was something bigger than that huge maternal drive I had. And that thing was my addiction. And so there was a moment of feeling absolutely powerless there because, my maternal drive was bigger than even my instinct for self-preservation. I was taking lethal amounts of pills and washing them down with booze on a nightly basis. I was not trying to save my own life, but I would have done anything to save my kids' lives, right? And yet there was this thing that was bigger than that. And against that, I was powerless. So my task was to find something that was bigger than that addiction, which was bigger than my maternal drive, which was bigger than my drive for self-preservation. And that just felt so overwhelming in that moment. It was, another month or so before I actually got myself into treatment and started to get well.
It's so incredible that love really, when I hear that and when I read it, I was like, love was more powerful than your addiction, really. And when you feel into, even at your bottom, love was so powerful in you that nothing could stand in your way.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so incredible.
And I just have to add, I write about this in the book, but when I started taking the pills I was taking, it was because I was at the end of my rope. They were prescribed to me. I hadn't been sleeping. I think that I was not diagnosed, but I think I was dealing with postpartum anxiety. I just like every effort that I made during the day besides my kids were born, one in 98, one in 99, both boys, boy energy.
Oh yeah.
And I was drowning in this. Like I was trying to keep up appearances, but I was really having a hard time, especially without sleeping and then taking care of the 2 of them, which I thought I should be able to do because I saw other moms doing it just fine. And I didn't understand why it was so hard for me. The pills that were prescribed for me helped me show up for my family. I was a great mom for years with those pills. I wasn't abusing them. I was taking them one a night as prescribed and getting sleep. And I was bright and early the next morning and let's go to the hayride twice, like whatever it was. I got to be the mom that I wanted to be, the mom that I saw my peers being to their children, not just enduring being a mom, but really having fun with it and embracing it. And that lasted, like I said, for about a year. And then my tolerance built and I needed more. So my point is that by the time I needed to give it up, to admit that I was addicted to these things and they were ruining my life, I thought I was giving up the one thing that allowed me to show up for my family. Because prior to that, I hadn't been able to. And that was really scary. So you're talking about love. I love my kids so much. Obviously I still love my kids so much. That's the reason I started taking the pills, was so that I could be what they deserved. And that was the reason I had to stop taking them, so I could be what they deserved. But that was incredibly, it was more than just scary. It was agonizing.
And again, I can't thank you enough for being transparent, because we can start to self-doubt and self-harm when we get in these cycles of really feeling like, but I need this. And if I stop this, then the love that I have that caused me to start this in the first place, to be funny for people, to show up for people, to get out of my own way, then I'm hurting them. So it doesn't matter if I hurt myself. And it creates this agonizing spiral.
Yeah. Yeah. It can.
Yeah. So what advice, or how do you support others when they come to you and say, hey, I see myself in your story. And I know I started this because I love the people around me. And I feel like if I don't do this, then I don't show up as the fun person or as the caring person. Is there advice that you often give or share?
Yeah, I try not to give advice. I wasn't able to hear much advice when I was at the bottom. Advice just kind of bounced off of me, and I resented it, honestly. But I did listen to other people's experience, and that, even if I didn't act on that, it planted a seed, that I could, call back to later. And, a lot of those seeds ended up growing inside of me and benefiting me. And, one of the things, I actually get more people coming to me who have an addict in their lives than people who are dealing with addiction. I do get a lot of people dealing with addiction, but most of the emails and DMs I receive are like, can you help my mom, daughter, wife, blah, blah, blah. I want them to get help the way you did. And that's just like the most heartbreaking, because I know there's nothing that anybody could have told me. If my love for my children wasn't enough to get me in there right away, then there was nothing that anybody else could say for me that would have been inspiring me to go get help. Because I thought I knew better, and I thought they wouldn't understand. And this was something that, like I said, I wasn't willing to give up yet. And so my advice to people who have someone in their lives that's struggling with this is to just be prepared for when they are ready to help them. When they are ready, when they actually ask for help, be prepared to offer that help. There's a program called Al-Anon, which is like the companion program for Alcoholics Anonymous. That it's a program just for people who are struggling with the addict or alcoholic in their life. And there are tools there that help people take care of themselves during this. It's not about taking care of the addict or the alcoholic, but taking care of yourself, because it's really easy to forget. Like you just said, it's easy to self-forsake when someone else is in trouble. You stop the self-care, or one might stop the self-care. And for the people that are dealing with their own addictions, I have this thing, I might have even told you when we talked earlier. It's another thing I say, that every room we're in is filled with music all the time. All the time. You just need a receiver to hear it, right? Like a radio, but it's always there. I happened to be tuned in one day and decided to act on that when I got the information through the universe that it was time for me to go. I'm sure that I'd gotten that message for years prior to that. But that day I was tuned in and I could hear it. And I don't know why that happened. I don't know why I was open to it. I don't know why my receiver worked that day when it didn't work other days, when I ignored the messages, when I couldn't hear the music, but I heard it that day and I made the call and got myself some help. And, it's more than just a matter of willingness. I think it's because I was willing to do things, but I wouldn't take action. Willingness isn't theoretical. Maybe willingness is the action, and maybe you're considering it if you're not in action, but the willingness is the actual action.
That's so beautifully said. And I know that we had touched on that before too. And when you had mentioned, look, it is one of those things that until someone's ready, they're not going to be ready. And it is hard on those who are in the life of the addict because you want to make them ready. And you can't make someone ready. And that is almost the addiction of the person who is in the life of the addict. At least that's how I felt when I was in the life of the addict. My addiction was in wanting to make them ready.
Yeah.
And so I would go to Al-Anon, I would go to other support groups and have to realize that I had to deal with my own addiction of enablement and find my way through, because I wasn't helping by constantly wanting to change things for someone else. So we have to find our own way. And the beautiful advice that you give, it's like the perspective to help understand that every person has their own path and their own journey. And it's not mine to change that. So thank you for being willing to do that.
Oh, well, and I really it's so good for you that you did that you took that step and got the help for yourself. It's so hard. A lot of people don't want to do that because it feels like, I'm already dealing with them. Now I have to go to something and so that I can take care of myself. It feels like punishment, I think, for people to have to go and join a support group to deal with another person in their lives or to help with another person in their lives. And it's not punishment, but it feels like that for a lot of people.
Yeah. And honestly, I can say on the other side of it, for me, it's a gift. And I don't know how you feel, but if we look at it like, hey, it's a way for me to get to know my own behaviors, my own patterns, my own opportunities for growth. So how we look at it is half of the journey, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree 100%.
I know I have another off of your Instagram. If people should look at your Instagram, how can they get to your Instagram? Because there's so much inspiring stuff out there. So if you can share.
Yeah, it's at lauracathcartrobbins.com, and Cathcart, no one knows how to spell it or say it. It's CATHCART. Robbins is ROBBINS.
Yes. And we'll make sure it's one click wherever they're watching or listening to this. If you just drop down right now in the show notes, you're going to be able to click on all of her socials, get to her website. There's a plethora of fantastic information. But there's a quote you have out there. Feelings are like children. You don't want to ignore them, but you also can't let them take the wheel.
That's right. You don't want to throw them in the trunk. But you also can't let them drive. Like, there's variations of that, but it's the truth. Like, right? Like, feelings aren't always facts. This is, I can feel some way about something. That doesn't mean that's the way it is. And that sifting through, like you're talking about, the getting to know myself. This process has allowed me, one, to act better than I feel often. That's part of my integrity, is like, if I make a commitment to something, and I don't make them lightly anymore, but if I make a commitment, I'm going to show up regardless of how I feel. I can't let my feeling tell me, oh, you shouldn't go because you don't feel like it now. That's no good. That's not in integrity. And I really try to have principled living now. And part of that principle, which gives me so much freedom, is integrity. So I don't let the feeling tell me I shouldn't work out. I did not want to work out this morning, but I don't cancel workouts with my trainer. I just reschedule them if I need to, but I don't ever just like, I don't feel like it this morning. I don't do that. It's part of my integrity to myself and to others. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. And you mentioned like you have a 5-step process every day to hold yourself accountable.
I do. Between getting up at a certain time, which is, earlier morning is good for me. It's good for my head. I meditate. I try to, I can't read anymore without readers because I'm 61 next month. So
No, you're not.
I am. Yeah.
Okay. Well, this 5-step process is a miracle process then, and I'm adopting it right now. That's it.
But so I try not to put my glasses on or a contact in until after I've meditated, because that keeps me from looking at my phone and seeing something that might interrupt that immediate meditation. Cause I like to get right into it. And so I I usually wear a reading contact. That's what I have. And I have one contact for reading. It's a really weird system. This eye sees distance. This eye reads. But so after that, then I work out. And then I always drink. I've been drinking it while we're talking. I drink a liter of water before I work out, and I drink another one like right afterward with electrolytes. And then, I have a writing, I'm an author. So I have a writing schedule, and I'm very clear about what that schedule is, and I don't deviate from it unless unless I have to. But whatever it is that day, that's what I'm going to do. And I make sure that I get my creative done first and then do admin stuff later, because that's better for me as well.
It's a great flow to know that you have a process. And then if something comes up, something comes up. But at least you have a process that you have in your creative journey, which then I think it's so important when we talk about the fact that, yes, we have this chapter in our life story. You talk about being a writer, right? This is several chapters of your story, but it doesn't define who you are as a soul. And so I would love to take the time now to dive into who is Laura as a whole being in this expression of you? Because yes, these are chapters, but what else are you bringing and sharing with the world? You have so much on your website as to who you are, and I'm sure that's still only like this much. So what else is on the horizon? And what other things would you share with our community as to what your soul is here to express?
That's a very deep question.
I know.
Very deep question. When I was on that board that I'm talking about, which I'm actually still on, one of the icebreaker exercises we do with each other in the beginning of the year retreat is the onion exercise. I think that's what it's called, where you like face a stranger and you ask, who are you? And the other person has to answer however they answer. Actually, they give 3 answers. So I would probably say the first time, I'm a mom, I'm an author, and I'm Scott's girlfriend. Like that would probably be the way I would answer that. And then the second time they ask you, you can't use any of those answers, right? So you have to dig deeper and find other answers. And by the time you get to the end, you're stripped of all the roles that you inhabit. You cannot answer with a role, right? You have to answer with a deeper answer about who you actually are. And I always have such a hard time with that exercise because I identify so closely with the roles that I do inhabit. Like if you wanted me to sum myself up, I would tell you that I'm a writer, and like I'm in my office writing most of the day, and that makes me really happy. And I have, a relationship with the man I met in treatment 17 years ago. And that we have this very like really cool drama free, this is a second relationship for each of us. We each got married and had kids and raised our kids. And And now we're together, simply because we love being together and there's no other obligation. And that's really fun. And we have so much fun together. We travel, we go to movies, like we do whatever we want to do, kind of whenever we want to do it, which is something that I wasn't able to do when I was raising my kids because everything revolved around them. So that's how I would answer. But the other truth is, the other part of who I am is, and this is something that I discovered in the last 17 years, is that I am very private. And at times I'm guarded, depending on who I'm talking to, but I'm learning to be more vulnerable. I'm learning to be more accessible, especially when it's helpful to someone, and not worry about the consequence I might suffer as a result of being more vulnerable with some, because I think my perception is people would use that against me in the past. And in order to protect myself from that, I would just reveal nothing. But that's not worth it for me anymore. Protecting myself isn't worth not imparting or allowing access to somebody who needs access to me. So there's a balance there, and I'm learning how to do it. But I am definitely someone who's learning that. These last 2 years, I have spent a lot of time rewriting texts and emails, taking out the apologies. It's like I have this apology impulse. Sorry it took so long to get back to you. Sorry, that was blah, 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 blah. Unless I am genuinely sorry about something, I take that out of my language. And when I'm speaking as well, I'll correct myself, because it's not an accurate representation of who I am. And I feel like that's old behavior. That's like, I think that a lot of women, especially, like, we end up apologizing our way through life, even just for being, sorry, I'm too much. Sorry, I'm not enough. Sorry, my body is not the right, sorry, whatever it is. And so I'm rejecting that now. I am someone who is rejecting impulse apologies, and only if you get an apology from me, it is heartfelt and it means something. And you're not going to get one otherwise.
Love that.
Yeah.
I had heard something that really hit deep for me in a similar area, which is stop apologizing and start thanking. So if you're late for something, or it's a whole different energy that gets exchanged.
Yeah. Thank you for your patience. Yeah. Instead of, sorry, it took me so long.
Yes.
Yeah. It's such a shift. You're right. It's like it turns everything, and people are kind of disarmed by it, like if they were ready to be mad, they're like, oh, well, yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah. How can I be mad at you now? You just
thanked me. Yeah.
So I love that. But then to add on to that, yeah, we have for so long apologized for things that are not our fault.
Yeah.
Like, why are we taking that on?
I feel like it's our whole evolution, especially in this country, where the suffrage movement was necessary, in order to do the things that should have been just like given rights, right? That these rights had to be fought for and still have to be fought for. There's still not equal pay, blah, 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 all these things. And so if there's like an order to society, women are one down. And so I think that comes with a lot of just, apologetically entering a room, apologetically, I was a stay-at-home mom. I didn't work while I was raising my kids. I would start by telling people that, by apologizing, not saying I'm sorry for this, but I had an apologetic tone. Like, it wasn't good enough. Like, I know you're not going to think this was good enough. I know you're going to think I should have been working. So I'm going to say this kind of like with a qualification or an excuse. And no, I stayed home with my kids. I'm so proud of that.
Good.
It was the best thing I could have done for my family,
And then you'll run into someone like me who one, knows that's probably the hardest job anyone could ever have.
Yes.
And two, I see you as the CEO of a family, which that's a huge undertaking. And three, what a contribution to society. Because look what's happening to our society as a result of children not having role models at home now.
It's scary. So, but yeah, I think things like that, and it's all learning. Like I said, I'll be 61 next month, but I feel in so many ways like I'm still like 16 and just like learning how things work in the world and learning where I fit in it. And at the same time, also not caring how I'm perceived. Like I'm not approval seeking. I definitely care what people think, but I don't seek people's approval. And I don't know if I ever did, but I haven't for a very long time. And that feels really good too. My happiness isn't contingent upon anyone's approval of me.
Yeah. And I think it's important to share the difference between those two. Caring what someone thinks means you care about people as a whole. That doesn't mean you need to be validated by those thoughts.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Right. And so it's possible to have both exist simultaneously.
Yes. Yes.
I feel like we lose sight of that.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I heard in your description is even though you're a private person, you still have this massive creative spark.
Mm.
And that flows through you in writing. So being a writer might be a role, but that doesn't mean that your soul isn't still undefined as it's coming through.
Mm. Yeah. Thank you. I think being a writer is a role, but I think for me, it's who I am authentically as well. Like if nobody ever read it, I would still be down here every day writing. It's like, a garden hose that's been left on and it just starts coming out of me like in the middle of the night sometimes. Actually, that doesn't happen very much anymore because I sleep pretty well, but like first thing in the morning or right before I go to sleep, I have a notepad so that I can write down the ideas. And sometimes if it's too good, I have to get up and go downstairs to my office and just put it on, on a page. And then I can rest for the rest of the night. I've embraced this as who I am right now. I am writing because it brings me joy. I'm not writing for publication, even though that's great. And I'm so grateful for it. I just sold my first novel and that was really exciting. That happened last week. I'm really grateful for it. And I couldn't be happier about that. But the true happiness, the joy separate from the happiness that I get is in the act of writing.
That's incredible. Are you allowed to talk about this novel?
Yeah, I'll talk about it a little bit. It's called I Want Your Life. And it's set in the 1990s, which is another part of my life when I owned an entertainment PR firm in Los Angeles. And I owned it for a few years. I was the only, Black owned entertainment PR firm in Los Angeles at the time. So I had the privilege of having almost every studio and record label on retainer. And as a result, I had this really kind of incredible, like 4 years where I was on stage with like the Notorious B.I.G. or backstage with him and, on set with Spielberg, all these amazing things happen. So it's autobiographical fiction. So it's all these true stories, but I fictionalize some of the characters because the story I tell is it's kind of like Single White Female. Did you ever see that?
I did.
Yeah. So where in this case, they're work colleagues and the one who is like the legitimate one, the boss, attracts the attention of this other woman who then tries to assume her life. And so it's set in this world of 90s kind of hip hop, blah, blah, blah. But the story is, this woman's coming in to take over. And so that's why it's called I Want Your Life, because she wants the life of our heroine, our narrator.
That's incredible. I can't wait to read it.
Thank you. I know. I'm excited. I'm excited. It'll be out in 2027. So
Okay.
it's a little while.
So something to look forward to.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll put it out there, and we'll just have to make sure we keep having you back on and back on. So when it releases, we'll be able to share. Well, having your soul flow through in such a creative way, it is just another aspect of who you are and what you share and bring to the world. And it's a gift.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing it with our community. I want to make sure, again, because people will be able to drop down and click and get to all your stuff really, really quick. But it's nice to have the little earworm that gets in there and just reminds them, how can they get a hold of all of your information so that they can start to follow all of the epic things that you have going on?
Thank you for that. The easiest way to find everything on me is my website, which is lauracathcartrobbins.com. And again, that's LauraCathcartrobbins.com. Instagram also has my website in the bio. So if you go to Instagram, which is at Laura Cathcart Robbins, you'll find me there. That's really the only social media platform where I'm active. I am on TikTok. I am on Facebook, but like almost never. So Instagram is the best way to find me, or my website.
Okay, fantastic. And I know you have your own podcast. So we'll make sure that we cross share all of that too, because you do a phenomenal job on your podcast. So those who enjoy this podcast, hop on over there, check it out. Can you share the name of that?
Oh, The Only One in the Room is what it's called.
And can you say, why did you create that title?
So in 2018, I went to a 3-day writers retreat that was given by Elizabeth Gilbert and Cheryl Strayed, which was fabulous. There were 600 people there. I was the only Black one. And so I wrote about that experience for the Huffington Post, the day after I got back, and the article went viral. And a lot of people, I thought like Black people would be like, yeah, I get it. But it was like people who were divorced and all their peers were married, people who were poor and all their peers were wealthy, like people who with disabilities or, different sized bodies, like so many people connected to the concept of feeling like the only one in the room or feeling alone in a room full of people. And they hashtagged their responses with the only one in the room. And so I took that hashtag and made it into a podcast. And so the stories we tell are for anybody who's ever felt alone in a room full of people.
That's powerful.
Yeah. Thank you.
When you look at the research of how many people feel completely alone in a room full of people, it is mind-blowing and heartbreaking.
Yeah. And then it's so simple. People come on, like we did almost a whole season on infertility, talking to the dads and the moms, and people, each of our guests was just shocked to find out how many people responded, how many people that they just had no idea that so many people were going through the exact same thing, not just infertility struggles, but the way that they were struggling with infertility, the particular, beats of their journey, beat by beat. It's really amazing. So the Swedish have that expression, a problem shared is halved. And so you really just break off a big chunk of your issue when you share it with somebody.
Exactly. Going back to that vulnerability, right?
Yes. Yes.
That being willing. It is so challenging to have that strength to say, all right, look, I'm going to open up, because that opens us up to judgment, to all the other things that come along with it. But it also opens us up to people stepping up and saying, I'll lighten the load.
Yes. Or just me too. Not hashtag me too, but just, yeah, me too, Yeah. It's so powerful.
It is. And that's why I'm so grateful. I really can't say enough how grateful I am that you would be willing to come on and share all of you with our community, because that's what our community is really here, stepping forward and being willing to do themselves is, hey, I want to hear your story. I want to share my story. Let's all connect and say, how can we rise together because we're all really at the core feeling many of the same things.
Yes.
So that's why I can't encourage them enough to go explore your podcast. Understand if they are feeling like the only one in the room, that they're not. There might be others on your podcast who are sharing infertility. There were so many guests on your podcast that I was like, wow, I love that she's taking the time to hear these people and connect. So
it's such a joy. It really is. And thank you so much for having me.
it's an honor. We'll continue to stay in touch and share information back and forth. If individuals are looking to get a hold of your book, how do they do that?
I mean, easiest way is Amazon. Otherwise, on my site, there's a link to Simon and Schuster's site, and then they have like 6 different links to buy the book if you like Booksmart, or like there are all these just different ways to purchase books that aren't through Amazon. Barnes and Noble has a link on there. So just again, you can either go to just my site or go to Simon and Schuster and look my name up and my book will pop up.
Well, I look forward to our next conversation.